Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your co-hosts, TV, aka TV on basketball, alongside my co-host Jay, aka Knockdown Jay. It's been a while, my guy. How's it going?
Man, I feel like The Rock showing back up after a long stint at the movies. Haven't been in the WWE arena in quite some time, and The Rock is back, bro. It's been so long since the last time that we recorded a pod. For those who have not, kind of been tuned in with this one, because we have been out of the way for a little second, just quick little mini tangent. We haven't recorded since early February. Basically, our last episode was the episode right after, or the second episode right after the trade deadline.
Yeah.
There's been so many things that happened. I know you guys have been locked in absolutely front to back. And today, me and TV get the brain dump. We have been sitting on 1.5 million different things. We have a ton of thoughts about
We,
things going on around the league.
we have
And life happens, but at the end of the day, the NBA world keeps spinning. And TV, I'm sure that if I know I have a bunch of things that I can't wait to get off my chest in today's episode, I'm sure you have more than your fair share of things that you want to talk about. We have a really interesting way that we're formulating the episode today. It should be easy, digestible, and also should come with a lot. Man,
of,
a lot of surprise, man, because I like I said, this is an episode where so many things have just been kind of stored on the back burner that finally get to be
100%.
talked about on the pod.
And man, again, I'm not gonna obviously I'm not gonna pull back the curtain a lot, but yeah, a lot of stuff has happened. I had to basically kind of stop the podcast for a little bit, but we're back into it. We're both super excited. I know DePaul hasn't been here, but it doesn't mean me and Jay have stopped locking in. It's hard
Nah.
not to lock in when the NBA is pulling out banger after banger each and every night. Bro, we haven't even talked about the Bam 83-point game. We haven't talked about the Tatum's return to injury. There's so much we're going to have to talk about, and we're going to get back into the flow of things as the weeks go on. We're going to bring back the Daily Me Picks Challenge. By the time you're listening to this, it's going to come out either Thursday or Friday. Should be come out around that time, so maybe the picks already have been back. But there's a lot of stuff, and we're going to go kind of full force back into it. There's a lot to talk about the NBA. And Jay, we were preparing for this episode, and something else came up. So we had to make sure we gone through that as well.
Sheesh. Boy,
So
did it.
the basketball world is on fire right now. Honestly, all good vibes right now, especially with the new agreement to the CBA, the WNBA, which we'll go into very shortly. But yeah, a lot to talk about. I'm glad to be back, and I'm glad that we're going to talk some NBA hoops, some WNBA today. Should be a good one. Great return back to the podcast. But Jay, before we do that, you have to remind people of our other platforms. Make sure you follow our individual platforms at TV on Basketball, at the Routine Jumper. Those links can be found in the description down below. In terms of the Hit Your Free Throws pod, make sure you follow us on TikTok and Instagram for the returning daily NBA content. You know, the picks. We're going to have some green screen videos coming out soon. Maybe some reaction to stuff going around the league. So make sure you want to tap in. We want to get back and again in full force. Besides that, make sure you leave a review. Subscribe to any of our podcast networks, Apple and Spotify. You can check us out over there. And if you're watching us on YouTube, remember to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you will not miss an episode. We're going to be back. We're going to bring back with the shorts. There's a lot of stuff we have to catch up on, Jay, and we have about a month of the NBA season left to get back into the flow of things, and the playoffs are, sooner rather than later, going to be right around the corner.
I'll say this much for sure. I'm very excited that, hey, the return happened when the return needed to happen. I'm just glad that it happened before the postseason started. Because like TV said, and we talked about this a little bit off pod too, but the ability to be able to ramp up before the playoffs start is going to be a huge thing for us. There's going to be a lot of content that drops, so definitely stay tuned for that because, it's going to be a special time. This is usually a very, very special time for me and TV as usual, so I almost felt like fate that we get back in time to have at least a month before the postseason actually starts.
Yeah.
This is usually around that time that the content ramps up by maybe even by tenfold some years. But the way that we've been sitting on content basically for the last month as of late, we got a lot of making up to do. So expect a lot of videos.
Yeah, 100%, man. And we are super excited to get into it. And we will get into the NBA topics pretty soon. But, Jay, we got to lead off with this. Because after months of negotiation, months of who's going to make the first move, who's gonna play chicken, the WNBA and the CBA has finally been not signed, not officially signed, but
Yeah.
there's been a verbal agreement, and the season is set to start on time, Jay. After all this time, like there was a lot of discussion about, is the season gonna have to get delayed? What's gonna happen with the expansion teams? They had to pull off some Chris move shot clock cheese to get this done, and we were able to go and get the deal signed. We're super excited to talk about it. And here are some of the details, Jay. There's a lot of positive things to take out of it, and this is coming from Shams, who first reported it.
Mm,
The WNBA first has an increased salary cap. We knew that this was coming, up
yes.
from 1.5 million to 7 million. That is more than 4 times the the increase in salary. Besides that, the Supermax deal is being implemented this year, which is starting at 1.4 million. And Jay, it looks like someone's already about to sign it. Asia Wilson
Mhm.
and the Las Vegas Aces. It only
Yeah.
makes sense that the freaking GOAT, the freaking best player in the WNBA, gets to sign it first. 1.4 million Supermax has being implemented. The average salary of the WNBA, which was like 76, 80K, 76K, 80K beforehand, is now up to 600K with a minimum of a 300K salary. Great for the league. And the one aspect of this deal, which I feel like took the longest out of all of them,
Uh,
the average revenue share is going to be 20% across the deal. Now, the thing is, we don't know how long the deal is going to be in place, so we don't know how long the term is. But, Jay, the deal is done. The deal is on the table. What are your thoughts on it?
okay, so let's break this down from the beginning. Most important thing that you mentioned out of all of that, the season is starting on time. That
Yes.
very key factor here, because I think that was going to be the most important aspect. Is the question around the CBA negotiations became almost less about the money, at least as a fan, I would say, became a lot less
Yeah.
about the money and more became about, are we going to go into a lockout? That became the bigger narrative.
Yeah,
And so now
especially,
that
yeah.
we've escaped that issue, now we can break it down to the real money aspect of it. Number one, I felt like it was inevitable that something was going to have to be met in the middle because the player empowerment movement across sports, right? Look at how much more guaranteed money is offered in the NFL compared to years past. Look at the basketball situation with player empowerment, not just with the ability to move from team to team with trade requests and things of that nature, but very similar with them, guaranteed money across the board. But TV, something that I think is even more important than those two elements is the WNBA did not factor in, or I think I think the better phrasing is underestimated the impact and influence of the unrivaled brand. I believe this was one of the things that I feel like was the biggest needle mover over the course of the last year, specifically over the course of the last couple of months, because TV Unrivaled did some of their best work this past season, and as we discussed actually off camera, they did it with a lot of situations kind of counting against them. No Sabrina Ionescu. They go into another season where Caitlin Clark decides that she doesn't want to play. There was the experimentation. I believe this was the second year with the 1v1 tournament, right? There were a lot. The Angel Reese, I believe, was actually injured going into the season for Unrivaled. That you lose Aaliyah Boston towards the back half of the regular season in during the Unrivaled year, right? So there were a lot of things that you can make the argument actually would have counted against the Unrivaled brand as far as production for basketball last season. And instead, when you look at the financial aspect, the backing aspect as far as sponsorships are concerned, and then the overall player participation, it kind of put the WNBA in a little bit of a bind because it's like, if they can go out and get their own league, be that kind of productive, and get the kind of national support that they did, it could usurp them in a real way. Where granted, the WNBA has the backing of the NBA, something that Unrivaled I don't think will ever truly be able to encapsulate. But independent creation can be just as influential, right? And I think that ended up being a big deal here.
No, 100%, man. And the WNBA knew they had to as much as they were trying to skimp out, let's be honest, they were trying to skimp out throughout this entire process. The
Yeah.
revenue share, I feel like only over this last week they kind of folded because for
Yeah.
the longest time they were like, "No, we're not going to give you revenue share. We're not going to give you revenue share." And the WNBA players are like, "We need revenue share. Every other league has revenue share. We need to have a bit of that," which
Yeah.
makes sense. Come on, it's at this point it's kind of um not tradition. It's kind of protocol across all like major sports leagues at this point.
Yeah, I mean,
So
even NIL technically counts as that
yeah,
same kind of evaluation, right? The idea of being able
exactly.
to get paid for stuff like jersey sales and things of that
Exactly.
nature.
Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of the same thing. So, I mean, if a college kid can make some bread off of his jerseys,
Why can't the player? It's
yeah,
a review, right?
I totally get that.
Yeah. And it's the fact that you had again the successful Unrival. It's the fact that this is a player-driven, player empowerment league that is doing numbers. It's actually even improving, like you mentioned. Even with the less talent that they had in season one, we're still doing numbers in this second season.
Yeah.
The inclusion of Project B, that was a big thing a couple months
Yes.
ago,
Yeah.
right? And
That's
then
a
they
great
were
ad
starting
too.
that up,
Yeah.
and then you already have like all the multiple sports leagues that these women are going to just so they can make ends meet,
Yeah.
just in order to like get like a full year's salary. So you have the fact of competition. You have these other leagues trying to be developed where you're at a point if you're the W and you're like, man, there's the fact that there's now options here that are competitive with us and maybe are trying to surpass us in that sense in terms of
Yes.
financially compensating the players.
Yes.
We need to like make this move, and that's why this CBA was so important because as much as you look at these other leagues, the NFL, the NBA, yes, there are other options around the league, but there's a reason why the NBA, why the NFL, why
I
the MLB
agree.
is number one.
Yes.
They have the biggest league, they have the biggest investors, they have
Mm-hmm.
the biggest screen time, all that stuff, and it's
Mm-hmm.
reflected in the way they're being paid their players. You get freaking we have Jason Tatum making 70 million over the next few years. That's like this is like where we're at with that.
Goodness.
That's why this is massive for the WNBA.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about it off the pod. Could it be better? Yes. But at the end of the day, the fact that we now have in place the revenue share percentages, we have the new salary cap in place, we have a higher minimum salary. Where we again, I said beforehand, they were like the minimum contract for 50K be prior to at just as of last season.
Yeah.
You have all of this now going into a livable athlete living wage of being one of the best athletes in that sport in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You mix in all those factors. Now you have something to build off and something to build upon for future CBAs. I think
Right.
this is a great step forward. And I'm just glad that they were able to get this done. And as a fan in general, yes, we're all for the players getting paid. I'm glad that they were able to stay put in terms of the revenue share thing. Like there were a bunch of I don't know if you saw a couple weeks ago where people were like, oh, the president of the CBA of the WNBPA and like some of the players were kind of at odds in terms of the revenue share and stuff like that, but they were able to stay strong on that. I'm glad that they were able to come to this, and I'm happy that these girls finally get paid, and I'm excited to get the season started, bro.
Yeah, I think another thing that's really important, like you said, is there was an idea of the market being cornered and that barrier now being broken down. I think about something, it's a little bit more trivial, but I kind of put it very similar to like your NFL, NBA monopoly conversation of like, yeah, there's other leagues, but like, are there leagues better than this one, right? And I think about
Yeah,
it very similar to like, think about Madden and 2K. There's no real competition as far as football and basketball games. So although you may want a better product, you're going to get the same product you've been getting because there's been no other version of production that could really create a push or pull on the market in a way that forces those other two brands to become better than what they've been, right? And I think the same thing could be said for the WNBA. I think that the WNBA was kind of getting away with the idea of just kind of having productive basketball, but really kind of being more of an influencers league. If you really think about
yeah,
it, over the last 2 to 3 years, a lot of those female athletes have made it a clear point, especially within the last 2 to 3 years specifically, that they almost do as much off the court as they do on the court as far as finances are concerned. For some of them, significantly more. off the court in comparison to what they make in the WNBA, right? So they became almost a bit of an influencers league, which I think also kind of hurt the WNBA's
Yeah.
credibility to a lesser degree, especially with the in-state installing, or excuse me, the installment of the NIL. Because now you're making it where it's like, dang, even college players might be making more than I'm making on a season to season basis, and I'm the pro. I'm
Yeah.
in the league they're supposed to be working towards, and
Exactly.
they're
Yeah.
making more than me in a collegiate setting. So now you become even more of kind of like a less credible league overall. Then you pair that with the rise of Unrivaled. You bring in, like you mentioned, the institution of Project B, which I think was a really great ad this year as well. And now you have this overall push where you're like, okay, the college game is playing players. The independent league is paying players. Overseas was already paying our players better than we were.
Yes.
Something has to happen, right? And I
Yeah.
think that this CBA, I think you summarized it perfectly. This CBA felt like the kind of opportunity for the players to kind of swing the pendulum back in their favor after kind of getting dog walked for a little while. And I
Yeah.
think something you said off pod is something that translates really well that I want to make sure makes it onto the podcast, which is I also think this was a great chess piece move as far as the 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 move to set up the move. I felt like this was a great CBA establishment to then make the next CBA conversation that much more productive. Because
Yeah.
now we're meeting at a place where things are already at a pretty decent agreement, I would say, as far as both sides are concerned, where both sides get, I think, arguably the best version of what could have been agreed on with, only a few months left before the WNBA season set to start. But more importantly, the next CBA now makes it where maybe things are not nearly as difficult to negotiate when you also factor in like there will be more teams by the start of by the time the next CBA comes around, as opposed to like these two teams that are coming in now haven't even one has been established, the other one hasn't even put their
Right.
roster together this season yet, right?
100%. Yeah.
So there's a lot less question marks I think next CBA now, because this CBA I think went as well as it could have been, despite the fact that the process might not have been as smooth as you would have hoped.
Yeah, no, 100%. And man, again, like we mentioned, the season is back on track, and we are super excited for that. This next month's about to be crazy, though, bro. Because,
Ooh.
Jay, not only, because remember, if you remember back to the Golden State Valkyries last year, by January, they already have done their expansion draft.
Yeah.
So when you have that in mind, and you're probably already a couple months into free agency at this point, if you were the WNBA,
Mm-hmm.
you have to roll that, the expansion draft, the WNBA draft, training camp, and preseason from now until May 8th.
Yeah. The clock
Sorry,
is ticking, TV.
sorry, May 4th. So May 4th is the first day of the WNBA regular season. So we have about 50 days.
Yeah. It's gonna be, like you said, it is gonna be quite the time. If you're locked in on WNBA content, have fun, because we are gonna have more than our fair share to go around with the fact that it's gonna get bumping quick. And like TV mentioned, the first domino, I would say the first two dominoes have fallen. The CBA agreement I think is huge, but I think the Asia Wilson contract extension is also going to be another big factor as far as setting the market. And I think that's going to be an important factor for what we see, because I mean, dude, there's a lot of very talented free agents hitting
Jay,
the market.
we're going to have to talk about this in another episode, but we will end off this WNBA segment by talking about this. There's a reason why people didn't want to sign their contracts before the CBA was agreed upon.
Facts.
Because the time has come. And
Yes.
Jay, this is some of the free agents we have available.
Oh, Lord.
And Jay, I'm not even going to go through all of them. Jeez,
Yeah, I know, because the list is quite the scroll,
Yeah.
bro.
Jackie Young, Kelsey Mitchell, Kalia Copper, Jewel Lloyd, Alyssa Thomas, Satu Sabali, Brianna Jones, Brittany Griner, Natasha Howard, Brianna Stewart, Kayla McBride, Sabrina Ionescu. I mean, Asia Wilson already just got signed. Dejanay Carrington, Chelsea Gray, Jonquil Jones, Aneka Agumake, Brittany Sykes, Hezzy McAbor, Alicia Clark, Nafisha Collier, Courtney Williams, Alicia Jay. Almost like 70% of the league is a
Somebody's
free
building
agent.
the Monstars this year. We just need to figure out who it is. Somebody's building the Monstar squad.
They gotta help, yo. These teams better re-sign their players. Freaking Nafisha, Courtney. Yo, Minnesota gotta do everything in their power to bring those girls back.
No, real
Like,
talk.
yeah. But basically what I'm saying, and again, this is just like a small amount of people. I didn't even talk about the freaking Kayla Thorntons, Natisha Hydemans, all those other girls that are still
Right.
available. And we don't even know who's being protected in the draft. By the way, who can these teams draft? Because now there's so many free agents. Like, how many can they actually draft?
Hey,
Like,
man.
a lot of stuff is going to come out about the WNBA over the next few years, the next few weeks, and we're going to have a better understanding of, again, expansion teams, the draft. Again, the draft is next month too, which is insane. But a lot of stuff is going to happen, and then
Yeah.
we're going to try our best to lock in, especially with the NBA playoffs coming around the corner. There's going to be so much to kind of try and keep tabs on. But I'm glad the CBA is ready. I'm glad the season's about to get started. Let's just get this official, pen to paper. Jay, any final thoughts before we move on?
Hey man, all I know is like TV said, we are gonna be in for quite the next couple of months. Like the next basically month and some change is gonna be very active if you're a WNBA fan. We are gonna do our very best to lock in 100-fold because again, it's gonna be very active. Very, very active.
This free agency is about to be insane, man. I only list a handful of players in my little list there, so we're gonna try our best to kind of keep track of free agency because this could go crazy. Hopefully, this is a good year for Toronto. Maybe you can like snatch up some guys. Hey, I'm a half season ticket holder, bro. Like I'm going to like half the games this year, so it's
For
gonna be
sure.
so I'm excited. I hope that we actually have a good team to compete with. But yeah, let us know your thoughts down below on the WNBA, the collective bargaining agreement finally coming to an agreement. We want to hear your thoughts down below, and maybe a couple of your predictions of where you think some of these players are going to go. It's going to be super duper interesting. But Jay, we're going to continue talking about basketball because we're going to finally get into some NBA talk, which we haven't done, like you mentioned, Jay, since February 10th. The WNBA obviously was the biggest topic of today, but now let's get back into the NBA fold. And me and Jay were kind of thinking about it, like, how do we come back to the pod? How do we come back and start talking NBA? We're just going to have some questions each. We're basically like having a conversation on the pod saying, you know what, let's have a question here, and let's see if we can try and answer and try and break it down a little bit to see where we are at in the NBA season. We have a couple of questions that we want to like kind of put out there to you guys, to ourselves here on the pod. And let's talk about kind of the state of the NBA and where some of these teams are, especially we're like we mentioned, a month going into the playoffs. And Jay, it's okay if I get the first question out here?
Yeah, of course.
Let's get the first question out here. And my first question to you, Jay, we're going to talk about the Pistons. Because now we are basically 60 games in, clearing away the number one seed in the East. We are 20 games away from the playoffs. Are we finally convinced the Pistons are in the top tier of the Eastern Conference? We've seen 60 games of this now. And more importantly, are they in that same contender sphere as the Celtics and the Knicks, who have been in that conversation all year, especially with the Celtics now with Jason Tatum coming back into the lineup?
Yeah.
Are the Pistons in that tier?
So I think the biggest thing, right, is they're dealing with a couple of situations that have not only plagued them all year, but a couple of them that are creeping up at a really bad time. For example, one of those that's creeping up more recently is Isaiah Stewart injury. That's going to be one of those things that does create a little bit of issues because it's one of those things that you wonder as a physical style player, even if he does get back right in time for the postseason, how would it affect his play moving forward? I think another thing that's really plagued them all year is their over-reliance on Cade Cunningham as a single shot creator has been something that I think is going to make them a very easy team to guard over the course of a 7-game series when it comes to shutting that guy down. Because although Cade Cunningham has been an MVP caliber candidate all season long, this Pistons team, as the season has progressed, we've seen within the last month, this team has kind of come back down to earth a little bit. Don't get me wrong, still sitting at the top of the Eastern Conference, still a team that you do have to worry about, but it's shown a little bit more chinks in the armor, so to speak, over the last couple of weeks. I mean, even most recently, Dennis Jenkins, one of their biggest success stories of the season, DMP coach's decision last game, right? So there's some of these situations where you think about what the Detroit Pistons are walking into in the postseason, and I think about some of these other young teams across the league that we have a lot of high hopes for going into the playoffs, and you go, what do they look like knowing that we haven't seen them in this environment before? And for Detroit, that's a very applicable storyline. If we can do it to the Spurs, we can do it to Detroit, because Detroit's in a very similar pocket as far as not really seeing them in a high leverage postseason environment. Last year was kind of a taste test, so to
Yeah.
speak, of where they were. But now there's expectation, and that's the biggest difference. We talked about this with the Orlando Magic before the year started. It's one thing to get into the playoffs every single year, and you got Paulo Banchero balling out, but you made the Desmond Bane trade where you moved 4 first-round picks. It's time to be a little bit better than a first-round exit.
Yeah.
Well, Detroit's in a very similar spot. I think when you look at last year, you say you're a top 4 seed last season. You won up that this year by being, arguably could still finish as, a top 2 seed. This season. Right now, they're still positioned well to do so.
Yeah. 4 games ahead of number 2. They have
it feels like they still have a pretty comfortable lead,
yes,
enough to be the number 1 seed by the end of the season. So they won up last year. So now you have to build off of last year as well as far as your postseason success. And I just wonder, with the right matchup, or I guess in their case, the wrong matchup in the first round, how scared am I of the Pistons? Like, compared to the Knicks, compared to the Celtics, am I fearful of them in the first round as the 8th seed? And that feels crazy to say, but think about where some of the 8 seeds are, TV. I mean, some of the teams that float around the 8 seed. The Atlanta Hawks are the hottest team in basketball right now. The Orlando Magic are a team that, despite the fact that they just lost their last 2 games, had a really strong month of February and a really decent start to March. And a team that, is a Franz Wagner, Anthony Black returned from injury away from being yo, are they somebody? Right?
Yeah.
And so I look at that and I'm like, when you think about it, even Charlotte picked up their game late.
Ooh,
we haven't got to talk about them very much this season, but the trifecta of Colin Kneppel, LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller together offensively against a Pistons team that struggles to score.
Yeah.
I worry for them.
Jay, this conversation goes back to us. Funnily enough, this goes back to our second last episode before we went on our little break. And we were talking about the trade deadline, and we talked about, man, the Pistons, it might come back sooner rather than later, but they really need that secondary scoring option, that secondary shot creator next to a Kay Cunningham. That's why we were waving the flag of a Lauri Markkanen. We were waving the flag of a Michael Porter Jr. And we were like, okay, we know Cade's great. We know that he is a top 5 MVP candidate this year. But when it comes to the playoffs, and remember, this is unlike the regular season. You are seeing a team for a minimum 4 games.
Right.
That means they're going to know every single thing about you. They're going to know every single little intricacy. What it means if you wave off to the left side, wave off to the right side. They have an extra microscope on your team. Are you going to be dynamic enough on the offensive end to deal with these coaches who have the playoff experience, unlike, a JB Bickerstaff in the situation? Because you look at the Cleveland Cavaliers, sure, they've been, playoff disappointments, but they've been there a while. They know that they're a bit more seasoned. The Orlando Magic, even them at this point, are a bit more seasoned in the NBA playoffs.
I agree.
The Miami Heat, maybe not the roster, but you have freaking Eric Spoelstra on the other side. And if you're talking about someone paying attention to detail, Eric Spoelstra is going to do that in a 7-game series. Although you do have the defensive advantage. They're still one of the top 2 defenses in the league. I'm not going to take that away from them. But will this offense become too stagnant? And this is where I feel like they differ from the San Antonio Spurs. Because unlike their star player in Victor Wembanyama, they have 2 or 3 other ball handlers on that team that can have different ball handling responsibilities. Besides Cade, get the ball out of Cade. Denise Jenkins, you want to do something for us here? Osar Thompson, are you gonna do a little bit for us? Are we gonna have to rely on Karis LeVert playing heavy minutes in the playoffs because he can at least come up with some sort of shot on his own? This is the fear I had when we passed the trade deadline and they didn't make any sort of move like that. Even like the Norman Powell, which we brought up, or remember we talked about Ben Mathurin potentially getting traded to the Pistons at some point? So I'm looking at this team, and even though I love what they're doing in the regular season, but especially since I watched that game against the Toronto Raptors, I saw this team and I'm like, okay, yes, they're more talented than us. yes, they are at least in non this game, but like in general, they are the more aggressive team than us.
Uh,
But at the same time, do they have even more offensive, shot creators than say like they have maybe just as much as the Toronto Raptors as well, which is kind of crazy to think about.
uh,
So when it comes to the playoffs, do I think they're Celtics next tier? Maybe someone can come up from the shadows. Maybe someone can surprise us a little bit. But as of right now, even I'm at this point thinking they're maybe like the third best odds to come out the East right now.
and I think that's fair evaluation because you also have to look at it's not just TV. It's not just that the Pistons didn't make a move because we talked. You make a great point. We talked about this last podcast. All that time ago. It's not just that they didn't make a move. It's that the other two teams that we're comparing them to got better in their own respects. Because it's not just that the Boston Celtics add back Jason Tatum, because that's a huge addition in its own right, in
Yeah.
name value alone, right? Even if Jason Tatum came back as 70% of himself, the shot creation, the possible defensive versatility he still brings, just simply being an offensive decoy you have to be worried about in that 5-out style offense under Joe Mazzulla are all things that you add now with Jason Tatum to the mix. You have to now worry about another potential issue on both sides of the ball. But even the New York Knicks make the subtle move on the low end, right? By going after, they put themselves in position to get more guard depth, right? And I think the most important thing for them, you look at what Landry Shamet has been able to do in the rotation without
Oh
Miles
man, yeah.
McBride. He's been big on this one. Jose Alvarado, who they did make the addition for, that was almost kind of a baton pass in response to the Miles McBride injury, which Miles McBride actually I think is on good trajectory to return very soon, which will be a huge boost for their rotation. It'll be interesting to
Yeah.
see how Mike Brown navigates through that. But
And
Jose
he has had some
Alvarado,
big playoff moments too. Miles has had some big playoff.
especially because he's been a playoff producer in the
Yeah.
past, even if it's not necessarily to a crazy scoring degree, his
Exactly. Yeah.
defensive acumen as a point of attack defender has been big time. His 3-point shooting and timely 3-point shooting in the postseason has been big. But again, you add Jose Alvarado to that mix. I think that Mikal Bridges has not been the player that I think all New York Knicks fans kind of hoped for the value in which they traded for him. But he still is going to be a player that I think is a playoff riser when the time hits. I think
Yes.
Josh Hart meets that same criteria as a guy who I think is a very solid player throughout the regular season. Came off of 33 points the other night against the Indiana Pacers. I think these are all situations where like they're a team that like they've been solid all year. I think the Jose Alvarado addition is one that might not get a lot of press, but I think will matter a lot in a playoff setting. And with that in the Celtics, again, getting better in their own right, I think the Pistons kind of putting their hands behind their back and saying we're kind of content with where we are. I think it's one of those things where maybe for the rest of the regular season it might not matter. But I think in the playoffs, they're going to really wish they did go after the Ben Mathurin, the Malik Monks of the world, right? Some of
Yep.
these other guys that we saw moved on the margins for not really crazy prices. I mean, even for example, Colin Sexton, who was moved in the middle of all of that hoopla that took place between the Chicago Bulls, Detroit Pistons, Minnesota Timberwolves, all kind of mixed in one. Even someone as simplistic as that, as another on-ball creator off the bench, they didn't get in along any of that.
Yeah.
You
And they
know?
don't even have Dennis Schroeder from last year, and he was masked for them in the playoffs.
Right, right. So
Yeah.
I
So
just I do worry for I worry that them being content. TV, we don't talk about this very much on the podcast, but we've definitely had this conversation plenty of times off camera. Being content kills in the NBA, and we've seen it in a lot of different iterations before. One of the most recent ones is the light the beam version of the Sacramento Kings, right? That team that kind of had the NBA fandom, at least Twitter fandom, in an absolute chokehold the year that they finished the top 3 seed in the Western Conference, and they thought they were somebody after that year. And they've been quite humbled very, very much since. You think about that Atlanta Hawks team that made the Eastern Conference Finals a couple years back. They thought they were somebody after that year. Didn't make any real adjustments. Here they are finding themselves a couple seasons later, and their franchise star isn't the guy that was their franchise star that year that they made that run. I look at those things and I worry about the idea of being content as the Detroit Pistons because you're a team that up until about a year ago we weren't really taking you too seriously for a while, right?
Yeah.
And I fear that getting content and being happy with just kind of being where you were or being where you are compared, because you're like, hey, at least the grass is greener on the other side to where we were before. It limits the ceiling long term. So I can't put you in the same tier as a Celtics or a Knicks when I don't know if you're willing to go as far as the Celtics or the Knicks are as far as swinging and being willing to even miss on some of these, the bigger names or maybe even some of the smaller names that might disrupt the rotation but might be just the kind of disruption needed in order to make a playoff run.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I, we talk about contentedness, and look, in a sense, like I know at the time during the trade deadline, we were like, you know what? Shout out to the Pistons for at least believing in what they have, and to a certain extent, you can applaud that. But especially, and we said this all season long, this weekend East provided such a just a clear path for so many of these teams to take advantage of, and I feel like the Pistons really could have at least maybe not overcommitted too many assets in order to get that secondary ball handler, that secondary shot creator, in order to make this happen. But now they're here, and I'm not gonna say that there's no chance. I mean, like, again, I have them as like the third, maybe like most likely team to end up coming out of the Eastern Conference,
Mm-hmm.
but there's still holes in this team, and they feel like more than anything, especially at this point of the season, the prototypical get a lot of wins in the regular season, a lot of Cleveland Cavaliers the last couple of years, and then you're gonna have some flaws come to playoff time. Maybe I
Yeah,
hope someone does step up, but man, Cade's gonna have a whole big load, a big load that he's gonna have to carry in order for this Pistons team to go far into the playoffs.
I agree. I agree. It's gonna be a really big question mark for a team that's still very young and still a bit wet behind the ears as far as postseason experience is concerned. Their biggest equalizer, I think, is JB Bickerstaff as a coach, somebody that I think can coach up in the postseason. You do have to ask a few questions, given that his recent success or lack thereof with the Cleveland Cavaliers, which I would say is a more talented team than this Detroit Pistons squad, makes you wonder about him. I think that I don't necessarily know if he's a playoff riser, but I do think that JB Bickerstaff's ability to coach is going to be a huge X factor come playoff time.
No, 100%, 100%. Before we move on to the next question, quickly, there actually has been an update for the WNBA term of the deal. It's 7 years with a 6-year opt out. It's kind of a
Okay.
long time, pretty long time.
I think that for all the fighting that took place to get where they got, to at least have something sustainable for the time being, I think you live with the results.
Yeah, I just wish it was a little bit shorter, so that at least maybe the next deal could be coming a bit sooner. But you know what? I hope again. Hopefully things do end up going their way. Jay, we're gonna go to your next question though. What is your first question that you have to bring to the pod?
So to kind of open the floor up again, but take a more of a Western Conference approach, the question I have is more so centered around the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are trying to be repeat champions, the first repeat champions in what has been almost like a decade of us seeing a more parity filled NBA. And my question is, TV, like very similar to the Pistons versus Celtics tier question, where do you feel the rest of the Western Conference stacks up in comparison to the Oklahoma City Thunder, who, of course, are getting an MVP caliber season from Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, has the chance to run it back this season and kind of is the front runner at the moment
For
to
sure,
do so,
100%.
but
Yeah,
has shown some warts here and there. Isaiah Hartenstein hasn't been nearly as good as he was last season. I think Chet Holmgren has improved, but especially as a defensive player. But I think who was already kind of in the DPOY conversation beforehand, but I think is kind of firmly in that conversation this season, has improved offensively. Jalen Williams in and out of the rotation, but TV, the guard depth is insane. Kaysen Wallace, Alex Caruso, Aaron Wiggins, Jared McCain. Like I mean, it's getting to Isaiah Joe. It's getting to the point where it's like even when you worry about them, you're like, but who's supposed to be the one that beats them 4 times out of 7?
of course. Sorry, you kind of like left the last part out. Sorry, and then like it kind of cut off
Oh,
there.
it's like in my thoughts, it's just like it's like how when you look at the depth that they have, The
Yeah.
talent at the top paired with the depth that they have and the postseason experience they're coming off of, even if you're a little worried about them, who is supposed to be the team that beats them 4 out of 7 times?
It's I I'm gonna be completely honest. I don't know. I
Right.
don't know what
Right.
it's kind of it's such a weird thing because we know the type of team that could beat them. And that team, we talk about the Pistons being green, the Spurs are finally in their first year of being really damn good. And in terms of the right pieces and everything like that, they probably have the best chance to do so. The only problem is they don't have the experience. They don't have even someone like a Mitch Johnson, who is only in his second full season as a head coach over there in San Antonio. He nearly doesn't have the head coaching experience in the playoffs in order for me to be super confident in the Spurs to make this a real competitive series compared to a Mark Daniel and that OKC team, who somehow just continues to stay together, continues to get better, and then gets Jared McCain for an absolute bargain, and now he's just opened up the three-point shooting, which was their biggest concern at the deadline, and now they've become a lot better at that. Well, I was looking at the rest of the West, and the biggest takeaway I have when it comes to the field per se in this situation is that do the rest of the West have a player that can legitimately, carry them over the top? Yes. You look at the Lakers, Luka Doncic. We've seen him do it before. There's no reason to doubt that he'll be able to do it again. He could definitely do it. But a very, very flawed Lakers roster around him. The Houston Rockets, Kevin Durant, a decent defensive player, and Amin Thompson, a great number 2 in Alperen Şengün. Just not enough shooting, not enough ball handling. Just again, a flawed roster. Denver Nuggets, not healthy enough. Don't have nearly as much depth that we thought they were going to have going into the season. And yes, they have the best player in the world, but this team is flawed. The Timberwolves, I don't know what the heck to think about the Timberwolves. It's like they go on some really good streaks and then some really bad streaks. They're the most unpredictable team in the NBA to me. So when you take all of that into account, yes, does the West have talent that could take down the OKC? On the top end, yes. But does someone have the top to bottom that can compete with the OKC? Do they have the coaching? Do they have the MVP caliber player? And when you combine all those factors together, and the fact that the Thunder just continue to dominate, they're currently on a 9-game winning streak right now.
Right.
After what some people thought, they fell back down to earth. They're fine. They're completely fine. But I don't know what else can compete with that. And we've seen it, and especially with last year, that even a team like the Pacers could definitely do that. But they had the depth. Tyrese Halliburton elevated himself to that level in the playoffs. Can we see any other teams, finding that in their roster? I don't know. So it feels like even compared to last year, this gap that OKC has built seems even wider, which is kind of insane to think about.
Yeah, I think that's the thing for Oklahoma City, and they've kind of stacked the deck in this way where it's like, again, you kind of went down the rosters. It's like, what's the Lakers' biggest flaw? Defensive consistency. Well, the Oklahoma City Thunder are one of the best scoring teams in the NBA, so that puts you in a really bad position, especially when your most dominant position is the guard position, and two of your biggest weak links are the two guards who are going to be on the floor a lot of the time during the postseason, and Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves. And I would say, even to a lesser degree, even LeBron James, right? Who has taken, I think, a pretty massive step back defensively at his advanced age. Fair enough. You think about the Minnesota Timberwolves, as you mentioned beforehand. What's their bread and butter? Well, defensively, they're a team that all 5 positions you feel comfortable with guarding on the floor. What's their biggest issue, though? Outside of Anthony Edwards, they don't get consistent shot creation. Very similar to the Detroit Pistons issue.
Right.
Well, guess what? The Oklahoma City Thunder have some of the best on-ball pressure in the NBA, paired with a top 5, top 2 even rim defender in the league with Chet Holmgren. So, as far as they're concerned, you shut off Anthony Edwards, it makes the job a lot more difficult when you have to ask Jaden McDaniels to be your second leading scorer, right?
No Sumo at this point, bro.
Yeah, right. So it's one of those things where, the Golden State Warriors aren't the force that you would have hoped, especially with no Jimmy Butler, with the fact that, Stephen Curry is not going to be, fully healthy going into the postseason if they even kind of make the playoffs calmly this year. The Houston Rockets have been easily the biggest enigma in the Western Conference all season long. because their inconsistencies offensively and like the need for Kevin Durant to finish with a 30 ball for them to be successful is scary to me. And they're a team that I think was a little too content at the trade deadline as well.
Yeah.
Um, with not addressing the point guard position, not going out and signing Spencer Dinwiddie off the free agency market, or not making a trade to go pick up Russell Westbrook, who's making historic numbers with the Sacramento Kings, kind of just wasting away for a franchise that like clearly is just trying to play for the number one overall pick at this point, right? Like that team, their point guard issues make it where if I'm Oklahoma City, I don't fear them. I fear Kevin Durant, but I don't fear Houston as a team over the course of a 7-game series, right? So like I named the teams that I think even Denver. Denver can't stay healthy enough for us to know who they truly are. Because when Aaron Gordon's back, Peyton Watson's not playing. When Peyton Watson's balling out, Aaron Gordon's hurt. Cam Johnson has been in and out the lineup all year long, right? So you go down the list and you're like, OKC has questions, sure. But am I worried about them more than these other teams' questions?
Yeah,
And
and
I
do
just
these other
don't
teams have the
answers to it.
rosters to expose those question marks that we have for OKC?
Yeah, like that's the biggest thing is like OKC has questions, sure, but are there question marks so glaring in comparison to some of these other rosters we're talking about, especially like what you just mentioned, which is like OKC might have questions, but they can still combat some of the things that those other teams worry about. How many of these other teams in the West are we worried about having the kind of construction to expose the problems with OKC? And the answer is like kind of none. At least not consistently enough to maybe win 4 games in a series. And I
Yeah.
mean that's the only thing stopping them from getting back to the finals.
Yeah, no, 100%. Even trying to make it like a long series, right?
Mm,
I'm looking at all of these rosters, and honestly, and this is how crazy it is because I feel like the Thunder are easily number one in the West. The Spurs are easily number two, at least with the roster construction as well. Again, we don't playoff experience, whole other question.
right.
But then you have 3 to 6 who are all in that tier, and I think like the Clippers are even super close to that tier at this point.
Mm, okay.
With the way that Kawhi Leonard's playing, like he's playing at an All NBA first team level when he's healthy, and
Mm,
now that they have a semi-healthy roster, a good point guard, I think they have honestly just as good of a chance as the 3 to 6 that they have in the West right now.
mm,
But it's just OKC and then a inexperienced Spurs team.
mm.
So is there anyone to really put a chink in the armor? Maybe. I mean, like we saw the Pacers do it last year, and that was like all the way into the finals. And look,
Right.
Jalen Williams is still injured too, so you gotta remember that. That's still a big part of the OKC thing where J Dub has not played a lot this year. I think he's only played like 20 something games,
It's
but
been quite the rough year for him.
it's been really rough. But if he's healthy for the playoffs, this team it is the way it is. And again, they weren't satisfied at the deadline. They got the 3-point shooting that they want to address in Jared McCain, and only giving up one first round pick. Come on, Philly. I know you can do better than that. But it feels like more of the same. Far and away the best team in the West. It's gonna be interesting to see like who's that team though. Like I have a feeling because like it's gonna be a team that comes a little bit out of nowhere that kind of does something to OKC that maybe generates a lot of headlines. It's just gonna see who it is because right now I can't pinpoint it at this very moment.
I mean, I totally agree with you. I mean, it depends. Is that where you want to pick up? Because I mean, that is one of the conversations we do have here. Is the Oklahoma
You
City Thunder versus the field looks like one that's a moot point in favor of the Oklahoma City Thunder, but for this to be a competitive playoffs, there has to be somebody that you
you know what?
see as a potential. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's one of those things where the Oklahoma City Thunder fall to the injury bug at the wrong time. Somebody catches heat. We saw it with the Indiana Pacers just last season, right?
Yeah,
There's always a dark horse. I feel like there's no postseason that we've been able to go into the last 5 or so years and not felt like there was like a legit dark horse that could make a run that then didn't kind of proved that point. I mean, the Miami Heat in
Yeah.
the bubble, the Dallas Mavericks when they made their run to the finals eventually to play the Boston Celtics, Indiana last season against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Like, there have been a
Yeah.
handful of teams that felt like they showed you enough in the regular season where, like, if they just get the right breaks, if they get on the right side of the bracket, they can mess around and be in the Western Conference Finals. And I think that's more of what the Western Conference dark horse to me is less of can they beat who's the team who can beat the Oklahoma City Thunder, and more of who's the team that, like, maybe not enough people aren't talking about being in the Western Conference Finals conversation that could realistically find themselves sitting right there across Oklahoma City Thunder with a 7-game series as a chance to make it to the NBA Finals.
I think that's a good point. And the Western Conference dark horse, maybe it's like you get the luck of the draw, like you mentioned, the luck of the
Mm-hmm.
bracket, and you only get to face the Oklahoma City Thunder in the conference finals. So you're that
Right.
one extra step into the into the finals. So I think let's go to that because my next one was who is going to, and I think combining two of my questions, which is kind of crazy.
Okay.
Two of the questions, which is one, the Western Conference dark horse, but also, is there anyone in this league that you see making that Pacers type of run like last year? That's gonna
Okay. We can
that's gonna
pair
be
those because I
interesting.
think that's a great point.
Yeah, like is there anyone that could do that? And I think we could start the Western Conference. Jay, who do you see anyone there that can potentially do that?
Okay, so the thing is, and I wonder if the playoff bracket is already kind of set as if, like, if we were going off of right now the way things are set up. Okay, perfect. So it actually is.
Yeah,
So based off the way the bracket is currently set, here are the three teams that I think are on the opposite end of the bracket that have a pretty favorable situation because they don't have to face Oklahoma City Thunder, Oklahoma City Thunder until the Western Conference Finals. The Lakers and Timberwolves, who would face each other in the first round if the season ended today, and then the San Antonio Spurs, who of course are the 2 seed and would be facing the winner of the Phoenix Suns and LA Clippers in the first round moving forward. Now, that's the funny part because the Lakers and Timberwolves cannibalize themselves because someone has to come out of that series. Interestingly enough, we saw this series last time and it did not go the
yeah,
way a lot of us thought it would. So I wonder if that narrative changes this season now that, there's a full season of Luka Doncic playing at an MVP caliber level. It seems like LeBron James kind of understands his role in the pecking order a lot more this year in comparison to last season, especially with the rise of Luka and Austin as a dynamic duo in that backcourt. I think that the dark horse team, and I hate saying this because it's the team that everybody loves to glaze, but I do think it's the Lakers. I do think that the Lakers are a good enough basketball team that, granted, this is not the greatest road if the bracket ends this way. Timberwolves first round, potentially the San Antonio Spurs in the second. But playoff Luka, Austin Reeves, a playoff riser in LeBron James, and you don't have to face the Oklahoma City Thunder until the Western Conference Finals. It's a pretty good path to getting to it's a pretty good path to getting to the conference finals. And I think more so, they're starting to figure out who they are at a good time. I saw a quote from DeAndre Ayton earlier today that was, a couple of weeks ago, he had made the comment of like, man, they're trying to turn me into Clint
Clint
Capella,
Capella.
right? And the internet clowned him because the very next day, Clint Capella balls out in comparison to DeAndre Ayton. And you're
Yeah,
looking at it and you're like, bro, you might not even be Clint Capella, dog. Like, it's a tough spot for you. And recently he had mentioned something in a report, or I guess it was a recent story covering the Lakers, where he had basically said, like, I kind of realized that I wasn't that guy. And that self-reflection has kind of helped me buy in more to the role that I'm supposed to be in, as opposed to being stuck in the ways of envisioning myself in the way that I see myself, or that the way I saw myself when I came to this Lakers team. And I think I pair that with some of the comments that we've heard both about LeBron James from JJ Redick and from LeBron James himself about wanting to fit in as just the third option on the team. I think JJ Redick phrased it as the best role for LeBron James is to be the third highest usage player on the team. And I think this overall understanding of roles and getting it now with a month before the season ends, it gives them a perfect runway to finally just solidify who they're supposed to be on what could be like the last run with LeBron James on the roster. And sometimes sometimes going into the postseason, it's less about how talented you are, even though this Lakers team is very talented at the top. And sometimes it's almost much more about how you're playing going in. And I feel like the fact that this team is figuring out who they are at such a good spot in the season, I think it could make them a really dangerous first round matchup to see. And then you pair that with how favorable their side of the bracket is. Again, not a great side, but no side is great in the Western Conference. Let's be honest. The first round matchup right now on the opposite side involves the Rockets playing the Nuggets in the first round. Good luck picking that matchup through 7 games. But I think if you talk about having to avoid the Oklahoma City Thunder through the first round, catching fire at a good time in comparison to a team like the Minnesota Timberwolves, for example, and then the talent they have at the top, Lakers fans are going to clamor. They're going to go crazy. But I do think they are. I think they are a legitimate team that you have to worry about.
Yeah, I can 100% see that. Especially we've seen the thing about Luka and this team, and we talked about this like earlier, and why I still have a lot of doubts about this, is that they're still stuck in that weird in between of this was the players that you got to try and fit around LeBron, but then you also had the chance to take Luka Doncic for last year, which obviously you're not going to say no to.
Right.
But now you don't have an ideal team around Luka, and you don't have an ideal team around LeBron, so you're kind of stuck in the middle. And now you're trying to make work whatever it is. And to be honest, the fact that they're still kind of in that bit of that in between, and they're the third seed in the West, kind of shows a testament again how good Luka is and how this team is still kind of playing together. I could definitely see that. But Jay, I feel like I've been pushing this narrative for a while.
Oh man, I think I know who you're about to bring up.
Catching fire at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
A reasonable path to the conference finals.
Mm-hmm.
The Clippers, man. The Clippers.
I know. I felt it too. They're more of a dark horse mold too, by the way.
Dark horse.
As a team that's a lot lower in the standings, still gonna kind of have to legit fight their way into the postseason through the play-in tournament. Like they are more of your ideal dark horse team, I think, as well. True.
And here's the thing, and this is the key part to them making this run. They need to beat the Suns in the first playing game.
Yeah.
They need to.
And it feels like that match was pretty well set, right? I feel like that's pretty well set that those two are going to be meeting in the first
I mean,
round.
I have a feeling the Warriors are going to keep slipping. Let's be completely honest. I think the Warriors will continue to slip.
Yeah.
And I don't think the Blazers will make up enough ground to get to the 18. So let's say that the 7-8 matchup is the Trailblazers Clippers. Kawhi Leonard on an absolute burner this year. Again, we talk about dark horse. Everything has to go right for this team. Kawhi Leonard's healthy. Darius Garland getting healthy at the right time.
True.
Bennedict Mathurin being that surprise player that no one saw coming. You have, your center. You have center depth. I mean, obviously you're not going to have Yannick Cohn and Niederhauser, which is unfortunate because he has that injury. He has a injury for the rest of the season. But they at least added Isaiah Jackson. They got a championship center in the past. Obviously, a lot more washed now in Brook Lopez. But if you really think about it, if you're the Spurs first round, you do not want to see the Clippers in the first round facing off against Super Saiyan Kawhi Leonard right now, a championship-winning head coach in Ty Lue, and you are seen as baby food in this Western Conference. I don't care how good you are. A lot of these teams who have that, Western Conference playoff pedigree, they're going to look at you and saying, these guys have not been here before. Wemby has not felt like that playoff atmosphere before. We're going to take it to them. And you know more than anyone that Ty Lue and Kawhi Leonard is going to give that to them. If they can get past the Spurs, I can see them competing with the rest of the other teams that they have left in the Western Conference. And again, it just takes for them to get there. They just need to get there. And if everything comes together, Kawhi Leonard is healthy. You can't tell me that Kawhi Leonard can't come up with some sort of miracle and somehow, some way get this done. because
Yeah.
we've seen that he is an incredible basketball player. And we'll talk about all NBA teams in a couple weeks. I truly think if he makes a 65 game mark, that he is a argument for all NBA first team.
I totally agree. I totally agree with that, by the way.
He has been that freaking good this year that he has elevated himself into those conversations. So, in terms of everything going right and having the pathway where again you don't get to match up with the Thunder early, this Clippers team is gonna shock some people.
Yeah.
Now, again, does it require everyone to go right? Yes. I'm asking a Kawhi Leonard and a Darius Garland to stay healthy for the playoffs. This is not something that I recommend you put money on. I 100% don't recommend that. But if there was such thing as a dark horse and everything falling into place, the Clippers pathway is there. All I'm saying.
I mean, here's a funny thing about picking the Clippers as a dark horse. Again, they fit the dark horse mold very well. Number one, 8 seed, opposite side of the bracket of OKC, gets a first round. If they come out of the first round of the play-in tournament, get a little mini break before they end up playing again, a very similar to what we talked about a second ago with the San Antonio Spurs being a very youthful basketball team, still a little wet behind the ears. That hasn't shown us, any real postseason, pedigree whatsoever with, Victor Wembanyama as the leader of the franchise now, which means they're going to be in a very interesting situation because I still feel as though even though they will be viewed very well as a team with real playoff experience, I think they're also still going to come in as a team that's viewed as an underdog. And I think that's a very interesting space to be in because TV, historically, the Clippers have done a pretty good job at being underdogs. Whether you use the version of themselves under Tyronn Lue or even use the version of themselves underneath Doc Rivers, this team over the better part of the last decade, maybe decade and some change, has kind of found themselves in their most successful situations when the deck's not stacked against them, when the team is not expected to make the championship run, when MVP Kawhi Leonard is not the expectation, right? When Tyronn Lue is expected to fold under the pressure after going down 0-2 in a series. That's when a lot of the time their best basketball comes out. I mean, we saw it this year. You start out the year 6-21 TV, and you fight all the way back to above 500, and here you are now. We are having a conversation about, could they make a run to the Western Conference Finals? That's not a conversation we were having 2 months ago. We were having conversations still about which number pick were they going to be given to the Oklahoma City Thunder in the first round.
Yeah.
Right? And so now here we are in a situation with them playing some good ball. Kawhi Leonard is the oldest player to average his career high in a season in NBA history. That's an insane stat, by the way, averaging 28 points per game. Insane stat. I think it's 28.6 points, something around there. Insane stat. Oldest player to average a career high, meaning the man's aging gracefully despite his, which some could make the joke, maybe you should when you have as little games played as you do under your belt. Fair response nonetheless. But I would say you get Darius Garland, something to prove. Ben Mathurin, playing for a contract.
Yes.
Very important. Brook Lopez, could he have an Al Horford postseason revival? The way we saw Al Horford kind of come out of his body during that Boston Celtics finals run? Maybe. He has been shooting the three ball a little bit better over the course of the last month. You still have Chris Dunn as a big-time point of attack defender. Him and Kawhi Leonard defensively have been absolute menaces in the stocks category over the last 2 months.
Yeah.
Like, when you go down the list, there is a lot to worry about. And I mean, TV, let's be real, right? You beat the Phoenix Suns or you beat like the Portland Trailblazers, someone like that, in the play-in tournament. You play the Spurs in the first round. Very young basketball team. You have Tyronn Lue. You make the argument that maybe you have the coaching advantage. You have Kawhi Leonard playing at an MVP level. He stays healthy. Maybe it takes 6 games. Maybe it takes 7 games, but you beat the Spurs. Let's say you play the Los Angeles Lakers in a crosstown rivalry matchup in the second round. Well, the Clippers have historically had the Lakers number. Now, granted, how many versions of those had Luka Doncic on them?
Yeah.
I'd have to go back and check the tape. But nonetheless, that's a series where, despite the talent discrepancy, I could say the Clippers have kind of always had less talent than the
Right.
Lakers in a lot of these matchups historically. So that's a series that I don't, maybe it's not 50-50, but I give them a 45% chance to win in comparison to maybe how I would have felt a little bit earlier in the year. If you beat the Lakers, now it's just OKC, and that's not a great matchup when you factor in depth, athleticism, youth, the whole nine. But who had the Clippers making the Western Conference Finals after starting 6-21?
Yeah. And
You know?
especially deep into that playoffs, look, the injury bug gets everyone. The injury bug absolutely gets everyone. The
Boy,
Clippers
does
know
it.
that.
Yeah,
The
I was about to
Clippers
say,
know that.
boy, does it, because I know they know in 4K what it feels like.
Yeah, they know that. And sometimes it does come down to the healthiest roster, and who knows what happens. Again, we don't know. As much as we want to say that Kawhi Leonard and Darius Garland, oh, they're guaranteed not to make it through just because of past history. You never know. You
True.
never know if they're going to be able to make it through. So it just means just getting there. And the important part about trying to get through the OKC, you don't want to see them in any other round before the conference finals. You want to
Yeah.
make sure that they're beaten, they're battered, they're bruised, and all you need to do is for them to slip up for you to sneak into the finals.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way you're gonna make it done. So in the Western Conference, that is the case. So I mean, who knows, man? And again, we have proof of a freaking Super Saiyan Kawhi Leonard in the playoffs. If we're talking about playoff risers, oh boy, we have one of the biggest playoff risers in NBA history on the Clippers. So should be interesting. I do like the Lakers one though, because again, Luka Doncic could do some magical things, and who knows? 41-year-old Braun, he might be storing something up for the finals and for a playoff run.
Yeah.
But there's very few paths, and again, you don't want to see the Thunder in the second round or the first round. Those are just some things that maybe you could take a look at. The question is there anyone in the East? I mean, that was gonna be my other question. Do you see anyone in the East kind of even trying to get past those top four? Because I feel like the top four are what they are, and I think people are gonna say that that's basically the gap between them and the rest of the East. Is there anyone there that you see maybe making some sort of Cinderella run, some sort of playoff run?
So the Cinderella run to me, it's a tricky one in the Eastern Conference because the brackets are set up kind of favorable right now. I think if the two top seeds in the Detroit Pistons and the Boston Celtics, I'd hate to be on the Celtics side. Is the
Yes.
first thing I think of. So if you're one of either the Miami Heat or the Atlanta Hawks, even as hot of a basketball team as Atlanta has been, talk about running into the wrong team at the wrong time if you're the Hawks, if you have to play Boston in the first round. You almost kind of prefer to finish as the 8th seed in a sense and play Detroit, and maybe you feel a little bit better about your circumstances. And TV, that's why in a sick and twisted way, that brings me to a team that had no business being in this conversation before the season started.
I like it. I like it.
TV.
I like it.
The Charlotte Hornets have quite the spot, don't they? The Charlotte Hornets have quite the spot.
Woo! Bro, 4 games behind fifth. 4 games behind fifth.
I mean, this is a team they're comparing to the 2014 Golden State Warriors offensively. Now, that is hyperbolic as hell, but the statistics do support it.
Yes.
Right? This is a team, you play a sliding Philadelphia 76ers team, injured, battered, bruised, and just cannot seem to figure out what a consistent rotation looks like this year. Right? Feels like if they stay where they are right now and where they're just in the play-in, and the bracket stays as it is where they face the Sixers in the first round of the play, or in the second round of play-in, they would play the winner. Play the loser of Atlanta versus Miami. I think that Charlotte Hornets are more than capable of beating the Miami Heat, who I think would lose that matchup between Miami and Atlanta. I think Charlotte's good enough to beat Miami. You play Detroit in the first round. We talked about the lack of shot creation around Cade Cunningham for the Detroit Pistons. Look at all of the shot creation that the Charlotte Hornets have between their top three guys, and that doesn't even factor in Miles Bridges, who I think is another guy who could mess around and have himself a series. I mean, we saw Obi Toppin do it for the Indiana Pacers. He had one great. We saw Aaron Gordon for the Denver Nuggets come out of absolute nowhere, right? So we know that there's guys more than capable from an offensive standpoint to give Detroit problems. So now you run into a situation where your next matchup will be against either of the Cleveland Cavaliers or the Toronto Raptors. I think either one of those series, I would probably favor Cleveland against Charlotte. I think the series, if it goes against Toronto, is a lot closer. Now, maybe we don't feel that way depending on how Toronto takes out Cleveland in that first round matchup, if that's how it goes down. But I think that if Charlotte plays Toronto, I feel like that series is a little bit closer. Now, I think that Cleveland would go in as overwhelming favorites, despite the fact that Charlotte would have just upset the number one seed. But then it just comes down to whose shot maker is better, LaMelo or Donovan Mitchell. Because after that, I think, it's kind of a defense versus offensive battle as far as your next kind of layers of top guys in a rotation. So it comes down to who can have themselves a better series, LaMelo Ball or Donovan Mitchell. And that one becomes a bit of a toss-up, but let's say that they'd be able to make that run. Now you play either one of probably the New York Knicks or the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals. I think they probably get smacked by that point, I think, especially if the Knicks are healthy by that point. I think if the Celtics are humming at that point, I think that they get smacked, and I think that's where the run ends. But very similar to the Clippers conversation, who the hell had the Charlotte Hornets sniffing the Eastern Conference Finals? Honestly, we still just want them to make the playoffs right now.
That's the goal. That's the goal.
But they have the kind of offense, talent, and they're playing really good basketball right now. Hot at the right time.
I could see that. I do like that as a choice, especially because we've seen like what those erratic, high pace sort of like offenses work in the playoffs, and they've been kind of a bit of the meta. They've been a little bit of the meta these last couple of years. So especially the way you see that the Pacers are able to get to the back-to-back conference finals / finals last year, of course. You never know. The Hornets could really throw a wrench into things. They could definitely play spoiler, especially if on, like you mentioned, that side of the bracket. Because like we said about the Spurs, like if you want to have one of those bottom seeds in the East or the Western Conference, you want to go against the fresh meat. And that is the Pistons on one side, and that is the Spurs on the other side.
Right.
You don't want to be facing like the teams are either the Thunder or one of those seasoned teams. So having that side of the bracket, especially if you have to face a Cleveland / Toronto in the second round, you're probably liking your chances there. And that's why I lean towards Philly. That's my little dark horse there. Getting healthy at the right time. Mr. Get healthy at the right time. It's the same thing with the Clippers here, where it's like, Embiid's not playing right now. Get him healthy for the playoffs.
Yeah.
If they can get into that 8 seed, that's, again, the key. Getting into that 8 seed. You want to be in that 8 seed or you want to be in that 5th seed? If they can somehow get there, the first round, again, who knows what the Pistons are going to look like come round 1 and facing the Butterflies of the playoffs. Then round 2, I'd rather Cleveland than freaking New York or Boston. So you want to be on that side of the bracket. And maybe, just maybe, Joel Embiid makes his first conference finals.
Man.
That's the only reasonable path right now that they have to go there.
TV is banking on a lot of Band-Aids for his dark horses, that's for sure.
Yeah, I like the Hornets. The Hornets was gonna be mine, not gonna lie. And I was giving like a small, like maybe potential edge to the Magic because Franz Wagner, if he gets back at the right time, they could do something, especially with that defensive structure they have over there. I just seen their offense too much like fold in the playoffs. I just can't trust it. I can't.
Even this season, I think one of the things I talked about on the Magic latest podcast of even today was something that they've been discussing all year is their ability to get out front and then completely collapse in the second half, where they've been forced to have to be this like elite level clutch team. Like they're one of the best scoring teams in crunch time this season. But it's because they kind of find themselves digging their own grave because like they play so well in the first half, then they play prevent defense for the next quarter and a half, and within the last 5 minutes of the game, you got Orlando Magic fans heart pumping out their chest because you're worried about the last couple of possessions being the difference between win or losing, right? And
Yeah,
I think that's a tough part for them because they're gonna be a big what if team this year if Franz Wagner doesn't come back healthy and he doesn't sound like he's on good trajectory to come back.
exactly. Yeah,
Same
that's
thing
the
with
thing.
Anthony Black. Anthony Black is, I think, a report from Jamal Mosley earlier on, as of us recording this, said that he hasn't done any real basketball activity as of late, dealing with that abdominal strain that he's dealing with. So those are two guys. Anthony Black was having a like most improved player candidate kind of season
Right.
earlier on this year.
Yeah.
Franz Wagner was a projected first time All-Star this year. And you're missing both of those guys going into the playoffs. You got Paolo, you got Desmond Bain. Jalen Suggs is playing pretty good basketball. Javon Carter's sneaky pickup on the buyout market, despite the fact that they didn't make any moves at the trade deadline. Like they could be a sneaky team to me. And I'm gonna be honest with you, if the bracket shakes out the way it is right now, I don't hate them in a series opening up the playoffs against the New York Knicks. Even without Franz Wagner and without Anthony Black, I don't hate them in a series against the New York Knicks, by the way. But
Yeah.
I just think that a young basketball team, battered and bruised, been dealing with injuries all season long, you got to face the Knicks and the Celtics to get to the Eastern
I
Conference Finals. Goodness
I
gracious.
hate that bracket. I hate that side
Woo!
of any of those like bottom
Yeah,
seeded teams. I hate
that
that side
bracket.
of the bracket for
Yeah,
them.
that bracket sucks, dude. Like,
Yeah.
man, I mean, talk about a tough path to get through. Because I mean, you face a physical Knicks team has a let's say a improved, not insanely improved, but an improved offense
Yeah.
this year. And then you face a Celtics team that like the vibes are just as high as humanly possible
Yeah.
right now. It's just like, ugh, that's not the greatest way to carve your path. So I agree with you. Between Philly and Charlotte, I guess those are the most likely dark horses if you just look at their pathway. It is kind of picking on Detroit a little bit, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Um, I just think that one of the things that comes with that, and one of the things that I think is going to be very important when I look at the landscape of the Eastern Conference playoffs more specifically, is I really, really am taking into consideration shot making this year in a
Yeah.
way that I don't think I've ever really considered it, because of the fact that I think I've always thought so much about like how does your defense translate to the postseason? How does your depth translate to the postseason? Was
Yeah.
a big conversation we had 2 years ago, even, right?
Hmm.
But I think the ability to shot create individually is so important. And we look at that Oklahoma City Thunder run with Shea and Jalen Williams specifically. And I think about that run and what they were able to do, the timely shot making, the ability to get to the free throw line even through the whistle.
Right.
One of the most important things I think through that entire postseason run was the fact that when the fourth quarter came, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander was able to put that clutch gene tape on. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And that their depth was so important. Their rim protection was huge. Their point of attack defense might have been the most important aspect of their defense across the board throughout that postseason run. But timely shot making might have been the defining factor, in my personal opinion, of that OKC run last year.
Yeah.
Timely shot making by Shea Gilgeous-Alexander throughout that series. I mean, throughout that postseason run, because he didn't have a crazy playoffs. He didn't have a
Uh-huh.
crazy playoffs, right? But the timely shot making of Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, the timely shot making, that timely 40 ball from Jalen Williams, right? Those are, I think that was in the finals against Indiana. I believe that was game 3, if I'm not mistaken. Nonetheless, I think that's very important. And TV, there's not a lot of great shot creating teams in
Yes.
this bracket. I mean, Detroit, Sixers, Miami, don't let Bam's 83 fool you,
Yeah.
Atlanta, And right, Toronto.
A lot of a lot of question marks. A
Right there,
lot of,
the Magic. I mean, there's a lot of when you talk about individual playmaking on the Eastern Conference side, aside from maybe the Celtics and the Cavaliers, depends on how you feel about Karl Anthony Towns as a shot creator for the New York Knicks. I think there's only two teams that you can have as true trusted, groups going into the playoffs as far as having multiple reliable shot creators on the team.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
I don't know if that's the de facto reality, because that depends. How do you feel about Paolo and Desmond Bain? How do you feel
yeah,
about how do you feel about Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns? How do you feel about Jalen Johnson and Jonathan Kuminga, for example, right? It depends on how you feel about those pairings, but like there's not a lot of depth in shot creation across the Eastern Conference the way there is on the West side.
yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. It's a bunch of flawed teams, and someone's gonna have to come out of this mess.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
should,
yeah.
Conference has been
Someone has to get out of all of this bullshit.
someone's gonna have to
Yeah.
come out of this mess. We knew that this is gonna be a very questionable Eastern Conference coming into it. And look, we could pick apart a lot of these teams, like up and down. This 1 to 8, 1 to 10 at this point with
Right.
this roster. But at the end of the day, someone's gonna have to come out. And like we mentioned, if there's anyone that's going to be the dark horse, if there's going to be a team that's going to surprise someone, there's a specific part of the bracket you want to be a part of. Because right now we're looking at the Knicks, we're looking at the Celtics. You guys, are you perfect teams? No. You're clearly not perfect teams. But do we trust you more than some of these other teams are trying to make a case? Yes.
Yes.
So that's kind of like where we are with the Eastern Conference. And that goes to show, I think more than anything, that anyone has a chance. Anyone does have a chance. So it should be interesting. West, again, there's a clear number one in the Thunder. The rest is going to have to fight it out. But it should be interesting. We want to hear your thoughts down below, where you see each of these teams going. Is there any dark horses that we didn't even mention? Is there some teams that we just completely skipped over and you're like, I don't know, we should be looking at those teams too? We want to hear your thoughts down below. We're excited to talk more hoops, bro. We're excited to talk more hoops going forward. The playoffs are only a month away. We still have a lot of stuff to talk about in terms of all NBA teams in the future. We got to talk some NBA awards in the future. It's gonna be a good time, and with the WNBA pulling a lot of stuff too, there's gonna be a bunch to talk about. But Jay, I think that we're gonna end it here. Thank you guys for watching. What do you have to tell these beautiful people before we have to sign out?
Man, this is only a glimpse of some of the thoughts that me and TV have. I'm not gonna be. I do not be surprised if there's a couple of TikTok rants over the
Yeah,
next couple of weeks. I know there's probably so much more that me and TV can get into, and of course, you guys who's been rocking with us for a long time know that as we get close to the playoffs, we tend to ramp these episodes up. We tend to record a little bit more often. We tend to really lock into these series because we're one of those podcasts that tend to try to get into the true X's and O's of these games and things as we go through the course of 7-game series, and we'll be of course covering every single one of them front to back, every single game. So there's a lot of content that should be coming. Thank you for those who have been really patient, stuck around, stay subscribed, still willing to listen, still open to listening moving forward. As I think this is a good wake up call, maybe even a very necessary break to a certain
yeah,
extent for us to kind of get a chance to kind of take a step back and look at everything from a 500-foot view. And it's time to get to work now, TV.
100%, man. We got again a month left of the regular season. We got the WNBA off season, basically going in like Sonic mode at this point, trying to make sure you get through all of it. You'll be able
Yeah.
to talk about, and once all the seeding and stuff come out, you already know the playoff predictions are coming. You know the season awards are coming. There's a lot to talk about as we go into this final month of the season of the regular season, and boy, am I excited to talk about this going forward. It's been a great episode. Remember, again, check out all of the stuff that we're going to be churning back out. The TikToks are coming back strong. Instagram, the YouTube Shorts. You're going to see the clips coming back up soon. We have the picks coming back. Make sure you want to tap in with the Hit Your Feelings podcast. We're actually on a bit of a roll there at the end of 2025, coming into 2026. We're going to pick it back up. We're gonna keep
Yeah.
picking back up, and you want to be sure you're locked in to hit your free throws podcast that way. And we have a lot coming for you going forward. So make sure you check us out. All the social media platforms those can be found down below, and of course check out our stuff, man. Jay has been on the Magic podcast grind and trying to create articles for them. So you should make sure you check his stuff out. And of course, I'm gonna be coming back with the Raptor content, especially picking up towards the end of the season. But yeah, Jay, that's the end of, today's episode. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you have a fantastic day. This is TV. This is Jay. We're signing out. Peace.